The wilderness is a paradox, a place of breathtaking beauty and unrelenting danger, where the soul seeks refuge and the heart learns fear. Its vastness promises freedom, a chance to shed the weight of modern life, but its shadows whisper of things older, hungrier, and far less forgiving. The stories that follow are not spun from imagination but carved from the raw experiences of those who ventured too far into America's backcountry and found themselves face to face with its darkest secrets. From the jagged peaks of New Mexico to the dense pines of Idaho, these accounts unravel the fragile line between man and the unknown. As you read, ask yourself, would you dare to camp alone in these wild places? What would you do when the silence turns to screams? The Pacos Wilderness, a descent into dread. In the spring of 2021, Carter Dobbs, a 38-year-old graphic designer from Albuquerque, traded his desk for the untamed expanse of New Mexico's Pacos Wilderness. His second-hand RV, a modest vessel of escape, was parked on a dirt road so obscure it lacked a name on any map. The landscape was a painter's dream. Rugged mountains cloaked in sage, alpine lakes reflecting endless skies, and forests that seemed to hum with ancient life. Carter, whose idea of adventure typically involved backyard barbecues, craved a week free from emails and the grind of urban routine. The wilderness obliged, at first, with a stillness so profound it felt sacred. By dusk, Carter had settled into his campsite, a secluded nook surrounded by towering pines. He grilled sausages, their sizzle a small rebellion against the quiet, and played his harmonica with more enthusiasm than skill. The fire's glow cast fleeting shadows, and the beers he sipped dulled the edge of solitude. Exhausted, he crawled into the RV's narrow bed, the silence wrapping around him like a heavy blanket. But at 2 a.m., that silence cracked. A muffled sound, not animal but human, weak and strained, like a voice calling from the edge of despair. Carter stirred, his city-bred caution urging him to stay put, but curiosity won. He grabbed a flashlight, its beams slicing through the crisp night air, and stepped into the darkness. "Hello?" he called, his voice swallowed by the trees. A faint shuffling answered, drawing him deeper into the forest. 50 yards from the RV, he found a man slumped against a pine, clutching a bloodied leg wrapped in a crude bandage. The man's clothes were torn, his hands streaked with dried blood, and his eyes, wild, darting, seemed to see threats in every shadow. "Name's Travis," he rasped. "Tripped on a rock. Been out here a day. No food, no water." Carter's instinct was to help. "My RV's close," he said, trying to sound calm. "We'll get you cleaned up. Call for help." Travis hesitated, his gaze flickering to the darkness. "We need to move now," he whispered, his voice trembling with a fear that felt contagious. "They're out here. They'll find us if we stay." Carter, chalking it up to dehydration or shock, pressed no further. He supported Travis's weight, each step back to the RV heavy with the sensation of being watched. The forest, once a sanctuary, now pulsed with menace, its quiet no longer serene but predatory. Inside the RV, Carter cleaned Travis's wound, a deep gash that spoke of more than a simple fall. Travis flinched at every sound, his eyes glued to the windows. "Who's they?" Carter asked, but Travis only muttered about hunters, his words vague yet chilling. The RV's dim light cast their shadows on the walls, distorted and looming. Carter tried to focus on practicalities, bandages, water, but Travis's fear seeped into him, turning every creak into a threat. At 4 a.m., the RV's motion sensor light flared, bathing the campsite in harsh white. Carter froze, straining to hear over his pounding heart. A faint crunch of gravel broke the stillness, deliberate and close. Travis's eyes widened, his finger to his lips. Then, a bang, a heavy hand slamming the door. "Open up," a gruff voice demanded. "We know he's in there." Travis shook his head frantically, mouthing, "Don't." Carter gripped a rusty tire iron, its weight a small comfort against the unknown. "Get lost," he shouted, his voice cracking. The response was a low, menacing laugh. "Wrong answer, friend." A window shattered, glass spraying across the floor as a hand reached for the lock. Carter swung the tire iron, connecting with a satisfying crack. The hand withdrew, a muffled curse following. Travis whispered, "We need to run," his urgency cutting through Carter's hesitation. They slipped out the back door, using the RV as cover, and plunged into the forest. The cold bit at Carter's face, the uneven ground threatening to trip him with every step. Behind them, voices shouted, boots crunched, and the moonlight offered scant guidance. Travis, slowed by his injury, gasped between labored breaths. "They're not hunters, they're collectors." The word hung like a blade. Collectors of what? Carter's mind raced, conjuring images of trophies far worse than antlers. They stumbled through the dark for hours, branches clawing at their skin, until they reached a dilapidated cabin, its walls sagging under the weight of neglect. Inside, the air was thick with rot, the sparse interior, a rotting table, broken chairs, a rusted stove, offering little comfort. They bolted the door with a metal bar, Travis collapsing against the floor, clutching his leg. "We can't stay long," he warned. "They'll track us." Before Carter could press for answers, an engine roared outside, headlights slicing through the cabin's cracks. A pickup truck idled beyond the clearing, 3 figures stepping out, their rifles glinting in the moonlight. Travis handed Carter a hunting knife, its blade worn but sharp. "If they get inside," he said, "don't hesitate." The men circled the cabin, tapping walls and windows, their laughter cold and mocking. "You can't hide forever." A Molotov cocktail crashed against the wood, flames licking upward as smoke filled the room. Carter and Travis coughed, kicking open the back door and running into the night. They burst into a clearing, and horror stopped them cold. A makeshift campsite, tarps sagging over coolers and bodies. 5, maybe 6, lay sprawled in the moonlight, their faces frozen in terror, some missing limbs, others slashed across their torsos. Flies buzzed, the smell of death a physical weight. Travis's voice was hollow. "This is what they do. They hunt people, take trophies." A gunshot rang out, and Travis crumpled, blood pooling beneath his chest. His lips moved, but no words came. Carter dropped beside him, the knife trembling in his hand. Flashlights cut through the darkness, the men closing in. He backed away, then ran, zigzagging through the trees to dodge their pursuit. His lungs burned, muscles screamed, but fear drove him until the voices faded. At dawn, he collapsed behind a fallen log, exhaustion overtaking terror. When light broke, he returned to his RV, finding it trashed, windows broken, belongings scattered. He called the police, keeping watch on the tree line, half expecting the hunters to emerge. The authorities found the campsite, confirming the bodies and carnage. One man, Dale Whitmer, a local with a history of violence, was caught, his penchant for hunting trips chillingly clear. The others vanished, leaving only footprints and questions. Carter sold his RV a week later, the wilderness's beauty forever tainted by its brutality. He drove away, hands aching from gripping the wheel, knowing some adventures carry a cost too high to pay. Whitefish, Montana, the tap that lingered. Nathaniel Stokes, a 38-year-old software consultant, sought respite in Montana's Bear Creek Reserve in 2011. His life of airports and client emails craved the antidote of seclusion, and the RV park, 10 miles from the nearest paved road, delivered. His campsite, a cozy nook among dense pines, hummed with the whisper of wind and the chirp of birds. The gravel lot was empty, save for Nathaniel's rented RV, a folding chair, and a thermos of coffee. The tranquility was almost overwhelming, a stark contrast to the chaos he'd left behind. Saturday morning brought a short hike to a mosquito-ridden bog, cutting his exploration short. Back at camp, he noticed a rusted Chevy truck parked near the trailhead, its faded blue paint and mismatched tires out of place in the empty reserve. It hadn't been there earlier, and its windshield glinted under the noon sun, obscuring any occupant. Nathaniel dismissed it as another camper's vehicle, but a twinge of unease settled in his gut. By evening, the temperature dropped, and he started a small fire, the steak he grilled a simple pleasure. Rustling in the woods, louder than deer, deliberate like footsteps, broke his calm. He called out, expecting a fellow camper, but silence answered. At midnight, 3 sharp taps on the RV's side jolted him awake. A pause, then 3 more, rhythmic and taunting. Nathaniel lay still, heart pounding, listening for more. Peering through the window, he saw only moonlit trees, their branches swaying gently. He'd barely settled back when the tapping returned, now at the rear, heavier, as if testing the RV's resolve. Steeling himself, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, the beam revealing nothing but his fire pit and gravel. Yet, footprints, deep, fresh, led from the RV into the woods, their size and clarity unnerving. Nathaniel locked the door, his phone useless without signal, and decided to wait until dawn. At 3 a.m., scratching replaced the taps, slow, deliberate, like a blade dragged across the RV's metal skin. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the night itself pressed against him. Peering out, he saw the Chevy parked 20 feet away, its headlights off, a figure motionless in the driver's seat. Panic surged when he realized his keys, once on the counter, now hung outside, glinting on the driver's side mirror. Someone had been inside or near enough to take them. Nathaniel searched frantically, his breath shallow, as the truck's door creaked open. A tall, lanky man stepped out, his movements mechanical, a crowbar gleaming in his hand. His faded flannel and mud-caked jeans spoke of days, maybe weeks, in the wild. A wide-brimmed hat cast shadows over his face, hiding his intent. He circled the RV, tapping the crowbar against the metal, each strike a deliberate provocation. Nathaniel crouched by the door, clutching a camping knife, its blade barely longer than his palm. When the man unlocked the door, using Nathaniel's own keys, their eyes locked for an eternal moment. The man lunged, and Nathaniel slashed wildly, catching his forearm. The man howled, stumbling back, dropping the crowbar. Nathaniel kicked it away and bolted for the truck, its door still open. He jumped in, slammed it shut, and turned the key, the engine roaring as the man pounded the window, blood dripping from his arm. Gravel sprayed as Nathaniel floored it, the man falling to his knees in the rearview mirror. At the park office, he found no one, the door locked, his phone still useless. He drove to a gas station 20 miles away, where a clerk called the sheriff. Deputies found the truck abandoned, its contents chilling. Duct tape, rope, a hunting knife. The man, Earl Renwick, was a drifter linked to assaults and disappearances, but he'd vanished into the wilderness, leaving Nathaniel with a lingering dread. The RV life was traded for safer vacations, the silence of Bear Creek a memory he'd never revisit. Blue Ridge Mountains, the laughter that hunted. Leland Durant's 2016 escape to Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains was a lifeline after a brutal divorce and a soul-crushing job. His campsite, 10 miles off the highway, nestled in a clearing of towering oaks and pines, promised peace. The world shrank to wind, birds, and the occasional rustle of leaves. A balm for a man desperate to find himself. On the second day, curiosity led him down an unmarked trail, its weathered sign hinting at recent use. The path wound through dense underbrush, old carvings, initials, dates, cryptic symbols, etched into trees like whispers from another time. 3 miles in, Leland stumbled on a crude campsite. A ragged tarp strung between trees, a fire pit filled with charred bones, and rusted can scattered like forgotten relics. The air carried a faint decay, though no source was clear. The bones, too big for rabbits, too small for deer, gnawed at him, but he rationalized it as a rough camper's mess. Unease clung to him as he looped back to his RV, the forest's beauty now tinged with wrongness. That night, grilling burgers, he couldn't shake the image of those bones, their shapes unnatural in the firelight's glow. Laughter, his own, felt forced, a defense against the creeping dark. Midnight brought tapping, deliberate, rhythmic, like a stick against the RV's side. Leland froze, flashlight in hand, but the beam revealed only swaying trees. The tapping stopped when he moved, resuming when he lay back down, as if the night itself played games. Sleep evaded him, the forest's hum now a low, mocking pulse. The next day, he stayed close, reading in a folding chair, but every snap of a twig jolted him. Around midday, a pile of rocks appeared near the clearing. A neat pyramid, unnatural in its precision. Leland kicked it over, heart racing, dismissing it as a prank but unable to shake the violation. That night, the tapping returned, louder, circling the RV like a predator sizing its prey. Leland clutched a multi-tool, its blade a feeble shield. The sound stopped, but silence was worse, heavy with anticipation. By the third day, he packed to leave, eager to escape the unseen eyes. Folding his chair, he froze. Another rock pile, this time on the RV's hood, mocking his resolve. The engine coughed, refusing to start, each sputter amplifying his panic. As he checked the battery, laughter, high-pitched, childlike, cruel, echoed from the woods, sharp as shattered glass. Leland grabbed his backpack and ran down the trail, the laughter trailing like a hunter's call. Twice, he glimpsed movement. Pale skin, a metallic glint, but it vanished before he could focus. Hours later, in a clearing, a man emerged, tall, gaunt, with stringy hair and tattered clothes. His rusted machete gleamed, his stare empty yet intense, like a void given form. Leland's voice shook. "What do you want?" No reply, only steps, deliberate, closing the distance. Leland ran, crashing through underbrush, until he tripped over bones. Human, scattered, half-buried. The man followed, machete raised, his pace unhurried but relentless. A guttural growl, not from the man, cut the air. The man froze, eyes darting, fear breaking his blank mask. Without a word, he fled into the trees. The growl echoed, sourceless, its menace undirected. Leland didn't wait, running until he reached the highway, where a trucker picked him up. His story poured out, frantic, as the trucker called the sheriff. Deputies found Leland's RV intact but empty, the trail scattered with more bones, some human, some not. The man was gone, the growl's origin a mystery. Leland never returned, the Blue Ridge's vistas forever stained by that laughter, its source both savior and terror. Sawtooth National Forest. The Teeth in the Dark. Barrett Tolliver, a writer crafting a guidebook on hidden trails, parked his RV in Idaho's Sawtooth National Forest in 2016. The campground, a quiet clearing among towering pines, was miles from civilization, its air sharp with resin and silence. Barrett, a year into solo travel after ditching a desk job, relished the solitude, though his mother called it a rustic crisis. That afternoon, nursing a lukewarm IPA, he heard a snap, heavy, deliberate, unlike the skitter of deer. Another snap, closer, sent his gaze to the bear spray on the counter. He stepped outside, squinting into the forest shadows, but saw nothing. The breeze rattled branches, and he locked the RV, unease settling like dust. An hour later, engrossed in a DVD of Twister, the forest stayed quiet. At dusk, stretching his legs, Barrett noticed footprints in the dirt. Barefoot, wide, human but wrong, with splayed toes and deep heels, as if their maker bore unnatural weight. They wove into the trees, vanishing near a creek. Following them, Barrett caught a stench, rotting meat mixed with ammonia, sharp enough to turn his stomach. Crouching by the water, he heard rustling, then a guttural sound. Not a growl, not a snarl, but something alive with menace. Bushes parted, and a figure emerged, tall over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a hunched gait. His skin was pale, blotchy, stretched tight over jutting bones. Ragged clothes hung in tatters, revealing gashes beneath. Greasy hair framed a face both gaunt and bloated, lips twitching to reveal teeth filed to jagged points. His eyes, deep-set and unblinking, locked onto Barrett's, empty yet piercing. Barrett froze, heart hammering. The man tilted his head, a predator assessing prey. Raising the bear spray, Barrett fired, orange mist hitting the man's face. A scream, high, keening, unnatural, erupted, sending birds fleeing. The man clawed his eyes, stumbling back into the bushes. Barrett ran, branches tearing at him, until he reached the RV, slamming the door. That night, footsteps circled, slow and deliberate. He gripped a knife, lights off, every creak spiking his pulse. At dawn, a thud shook the RV. Outside, a severed hand lay, pale, mottled with jagged nails, its wrist torn ragged. Flies buzzed as Barrett's stomach heaved. He sped away, tires spitting gravel, to Stanley's sheriff's office. Deputy Colton, skeptical but thorough, returned with him. The hand was gone, footprints erased, the stench faded. Colton's pitying look stung, but Barrett's certainty held. Later, at a Twin Falls motel, he found online rumors of Amos Kane, a 1950s logger turned feral, linked to vanishings in the Sawtooths. Whether the man was Kane or another lost soul, his scream, and those teeth, haunted Barrett, ending his guidebook dreams. Tonto National Forest. The grin that stalked. Landry Tate, 42 and newly divorced, sought simplicity in Arizona's Tonto National Forest in 2019. His RV, parked by a dry wash among Red Rock Canyons and Ponderosa Pines, was a refuge from a failed marriage and a sales job he'd quit. The first days were idyllic. Hikes through quiet trails, evenings with books untouched since college, and no cell signal to disturb his peace. The isolation scrubbed away years of corporate grit, each starlit night a step toward renewal. On the third night, by a small campfire, rustling in the wash broke his calm. Heavier than javelinas, deliberate like footsteps. Landry doused the fire and aimed his flashlight, catching a figure 30 feet away. The man stood rigid, dusty flannel and chewed boots marking him as a wanderer. "Need help?" Landry called. No reply, only a stare. Not at him, but through him. The light hit the man's face, revealing a grin too wide, teeth broken and uneven, eyes glinting with a vacant intensity. Landry backed into the RV, locking the door, peeking through blinds. The man stood, grinning, unmoving. Sleep fled. The grin burned into his mind. By morning, the man was gone, and Landry convinced himself he'd been a harmless drifter. Hiking a loop trail, he scanned for signs, but the forest held its secrets. Back at camp, heating chili, a soft tap came, then again insistent. Knife in hand, Landry checked the windows, nothing. Outside, he found high, scratched into the RV's paint by the wheel well. The letters jagged, deliberate. Regret flooded him. He packed to leave, seeking a safer site. Opening the storage compartment, Landry froze. The man was inside, curled like a predator, grinning that same grin, a rusted wrench clutched tight. He lunged, the wrench grazing Landry's shoulder, sending him sprawling. Landry ran, the man's laugh hollow, detached, chasing him into the trees. Hiding behind a boulder until dusk, he returned to find the RV trashed, food scattered, run gouged into the wall. Starting the engine, he saw the man in the road, wrench raised. Landry swerved, glass cracking as the man struck the windshield, tumbling off. At a ranger station, Landry spilled his story to Ranger Colton, who returned pale from the sight. A grave held another camper's remains, linked to Ezra Kane, a transient with a violent past. Kane was later caught, his camp a grim gallery of stolen gear and trophies. The scratches on Landry's RV endured, a testament to the grin that stalked him, and a warning to trust the wild at your peril. These tales, etched across America's wild heart, reveal a truth as old as the land itself. The wilderness is no mere backdrop but a living force, indifferent to our dreams and merciless to our mistakes. Carter's hunters, Nathaniel's drifter, Leland's machete-wielding shadow, each faced a darkness that thrives where roads end and signals fade. Barrett's toothed horror and Landry's grinning predator remind us that survival hinges on instinct, not bravado. The names, Whitmer, Renwick, Kane, linger like scars, their motives as elusive as the wind. Could you outrun their echoes? Would you hear the footsteps in time? The wild waits, its silence a challenge, its shadows a test. Choose your path wisely, for not all who wander find their way home.